Hi, guys. Welcome to Game Changers, the podcast where we speak to the builders, leaders, and visionaries shaping the future of the gaming industry. Today's guest has seen the game industry from multiple angles as a founder, as an executive producer, and now an advisor helping studios scale sustainably. Anton Slashcev has worked with major companies like Playrix and Belka Games and has first-hand experience building and leading teams across very different stages of growth. Today, we are diving into executive production, studio strategy, scaling games, and what it really takes to ship at scale. Anton, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right. Anton, so you've worked as a founder, executive producer, and advisor. So how has your perspective on game development changed across those roles?
So I think the two biggest shifts, I had two biggest shifts. So the first one, like when I was shifting from narrative lead at Playrix to producer, being a narrative lead, I was, of course, mostly into the narrative, the meta game, the art, the UX, and all this stuff. And I didn't fully saw the whole picture, like how does it really fits into the project overall. How much does narrative actually, or meta overall, how does the meta contribute to the overall project? Is it like the most important thing in the game, or the least important thing in the game? How it is even connected with the other systems? So I was lacking this understanding. And when I was shifting to a producer role, I started to understand more how all pieces all together in the project work simultaneously. What are the most important, what are least important, and most importantly, how changes in different aspects of the game influence the metric, because overall it's all about data-driven development. So you need to really understand what can actually move the needle in the project when you make the changes. So that's, I think, the first one. And the second one was when I was transferring from the producer to founder of my own studio, because there you need to have even a bigger picture, because you not only have some projects, you also need to understand how these projects fit into the company's strategy. Even if the project is successful, will it help the company? Will it help the company to survive, to thrive, or not? So yeah, that's another leap where I had to shift from project mindset to company mindset.
Okay. And when you were earlier in your career, maybe as even like as you said, founder, what did you think mattered most? And that you now see differently.
Matter most in what aspect?
In the sense, as a founder, when compared to when you were working as an executive producer, but things changed for you when you were looking at it as a founder's role, in a founder's role.
Well, I think the biggest difference, and I think that's something that all producers should try to grow in themselves, is ownership. So companies like to speak, they love to speak about ownership, sense of ownership for producers, for everyone. But usually most people, they don't really have the real ownership, and they don't really have the sense of ownership. And this leads to decisions and products that are made, and that are just okay. So you just make your job, and it's okay, and you call it a day. While if you imagine that you're the owner of the product or the company, would you be satisfied with this result, with this quality, with the speed of the team? Would you be satisfied with the plan that you came up with? And sometimes it really changes your perspective, because when you really have the ownership and you own both the failures and successes, you will act completely differently than when it was your job. And eventually it's when it's weekends, you can just forget about it. So I think that the sense of ownership is the very important. both for producers and especially for founders.
Got it. When you compare that your experience as a founder and versus when you were working at Playrix, what is the biggest difference in mindset between building and scaling? If you could talk about that.
Uh, yeah, there is also a very good book on that. I think From Zero to One, a very famous business book that talks about the difference between building something from scratch and scaling something like from one to infinity. That requires quite different approaches. So I think the biggest differences are that the two things. The first one is speed, speed of decision making, of like prototyping, of shipping. At any large company, it always like painfully slow, especially like if some people like things to move around quickly. That's not how it goes in any big company. You will have to make a lot of approvals, and even for not that big changes in the game. So they're usually quite slow. While when you're working on a new thing, it's of course much faster.
Yeah.
And the second thing is of that, like when you're making something new, you're like kind of jack of all trades. In the big company, you're usually responsible for like one very dedicated direction, and you just cover it, and that's it. While when you're working on a new project on startup, you're doing a bits of everything, and you need to learn again much faster. You need to learn a lot of things. You need to both understand the marketing, user acquisition. You need to understand like investor relations. You need to understand how to pay taxes, how to pay salaries, which is not related to building games, but you need to understand this stuff, because that's your company. If you don't understand that, if you will be screwed. So you have to make this done. So yeah, you need to learn a lot of different things and learn fast.
Got it. Coming to the executive producer role, so for people who aren't familiar with the role, can you tell us what an executive producer actually controls or influences?
So I think for gaming industry, there is no like unified understanding of this role of like overall role of producer. Different studios and markets, they understand it differently. So overall, usually producer is responsible for the commercial success or other success, if commercial is not important, for the success of the project. And basically, this boils down to three things. The first one is strategy, like basically what's the plan, what we're doing and why, what is the hypothesis, uh, what will be like our advantages, how we're gonna achieve what we want. The second one is resources. So executive producer or any other producer, they need to find resources to execute their strategy. Either they need to pitch to stakeholders and get these resources from company or to investors or publishers or like whatever, but they need to make sure that there are enough resources to execute the strategy. Resources are like people, team, time, and of course money. Yeah, so they need to get all of this. And then there is a production pipeline. So basically, it connects the resources and the strategy. Some might think that if you have a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of team, somehow this magically will transfer into a great result. But unfortunately, that's not the case. You can easily burn a lot of money and time into nothing if you don't have the pipeline. So the third thing is to create some process and to make sure all are on the same page, create a pipeline that would transfer basically your resources into outcomes, desired outcomes of your strategy. So very basically, these are three things that producers usually are involved. Sometimes they own them, but sometimes they don't own them. They like involved in them, and There can be like co-founders also be involved, sometimes not. Also, producers sometimes are more involved in creative decisions in games, especially on mobile games. Sometimes they are like also serve as like game directors and basically own the execution of their strategy, own some creative decisions. Sometimes they're not involved at all. For example, mostly in PC games, mostly producers are not involved in like creative game design decisions. Usually they have a dedicated game director or creative director for that. So this part, it depends. In some studios, in some markets, producers are involved into creative decisions, in others not. But overall, they should be responsible for the success of the project using strategy, resources, and pipeline.
Awesome. Very well explained. Like people mostly assume it's a high level oversight, but it's kind of, much deeper than that, the role of an executive producer.
Yeah, definitely. And also it's important that it can vary a lot from company to company.
Sure. Yeah. If the budgets are, huge and there are tighter timelines, so how do you personally approach, these high stake decisions? Is it like process driven or data driven, or is it sometimes, just instinct as well?
So usually you want to de-risk your decisions. So you want to come up with some workarounds or clever shortcuts to test. Like it's better to assume that you don't know anything usually, uh, and just try different directions cheaply. And only when you find something that you have some data proven direction, then allocate more resources into that. So usually you want to first find some cheap ways to test your hypothesis, ideas, strategies, etc. And only when you see at least some initial potential there, you can allocate more resources.
Got it. Okay. And then also you've seen games ship successfully, and also you've probably seen some, which quietly disappear. So from your experience, what is it that most often, separates projects that ship versus from those who, slowly die in development?
Usually it comes down to two things. It's either lack of vision, so meaning that the team don't really know where they're heading. They're constantly pivoting from one thing to another. They don't have a clear like understanding of what they want to build, or it's miscalculation of the scope. Also very very common mistake when the so it's like something what is called feature creep, when you continue add more and more and more feature in your roadmap until it just cracks because you simply cannot deliver um, everything at once. So usually it boils down to one of these two, or sometimes combination of both, when the team doesn't know what they want to build and they continue to add more stuff that they're actually are not capable to deliver, instead of cutting all the unnecessary things. Yeah, and this usually leads to the project dies in in the development stage.
Okay. How early is it that you can sense that something is going wrong, or are there any early red flags of serious production risk?
It significantly depends on the project and on the team, but I think first of all, so usually you want to have some kind of again strategy and plan in mind, and you want to set some reasonable KPIs and to check against them. And if the team, the project doesn't meet the KPI, you want to make a retrospective, like why we didn't achieve this KPIs. Sometimes there are like objective reasons, and you don't need to be worried. Sometimes, well, there is a reasonable explanation of why something went wrong. Sometimes maybe you're making a new game with new technological pipeline, and you underestimated like the difficulty of this. Okay, like then we need to de-risk it further. We need to make sure that this risk won't happen again. So you need to make some some steps to reduce risks further. So usually you just have some plan, you have some measurable KPIs, and you just validate the results against KPI. If something went wrong, you try to understand, was there like some reasonable thing that prevented the team from achieving the KPI? If yes, how we reduce risk of it happening again?
Mhm.
If no, well, that's probably a red flag. Then probably there is either a lack of vision or there is too much scope, and you need to deal with this.
Got it. Okay. And have you seen any kind of culture or production philosophy that was, different from all the places that you worked at?
You mean the one that leads to successful outcomes or
Yes.
to
I mean both, like even in terms of the culture in the team, or some kind of mantra or philosophy that a particular studio is following. Like maybe Playrix was different, Belka Games was different. Your own studio, you had a different culture. So was there anything like that, or was it consistent across the places that you worked at?
No, I think that so each successful studio they usually have their pretty much differently success like ways to success, and but all failed studios usually have very common reasons to fail. I would put it like that. So there is no like one unified approach that might lead studios to successful like, production and successful games. Like for example, Playrix, they were like obsessed with quality of everything in the game, and that led to like extremely polished games with even where like even smallest nuances are like super polished, super qualitative, and this leads to the game is like has extremely high product value, and it's very hard to copy. Despite like there were at the time there were a lot of like homescapes, gardenscapes clones, none of them reached the like the scale of homescapes or gardenscapes.
Mm.
Uh, and then this was the motto, like that we value the quality over quantity. We want the best quality on the market, and that's it. And we will do like the feature or the content as long as it's needed to make sure that it has the best quality. That was like the approach, at least when I was there. It might have changed, but that was the culture there. Like, well, for Belka games, they are extremely data driven. They're doing like measuring everything, uh, making hypotheses for everything. Every product change in the game, it should have some explanation how it will affect the metric, how much it can boost the revenue or retention or like anything.
Yeah.
So it was always like super that data driven process of decision making, and that was completely different culture.
Understood. Okay. While now you're advising studios, is there what kind of problems do teams face, or what are the concerns that most often they come to you with?
So usually they have like the most common are two issues they come to me with. The first one is we have like a nice game with nice initial metrics, nice short-term retention and playtime, but very fast we lose players and they lose interest in our game, and they don't return on like day 7, day 30, day 90, etc. So basically the issue of long-term retention and long-term progression for players, that's something I see many studios struggle with, even when they have like a solid, really solid foundation, fun core gameplay, good initial like early metrics, but sometimes they still struggle with this long-term retentions quite often, I would say. And the other situation is, I would say, hybridization and adding live ops. So let's say the team has a successful hyper casual, or not specifically hyper casual, but mostly like ads based game with significant amount of revenue coming from ads. and they want to shift to add more in-app purchases, and usually this leads to that we need to actually add a live ops layer to engage players more in our game, to add more value to our game, and through that to boost in-app purchases. So these are, I think, two of the most common issues studios come to me and I help them with.
Beyond revenue, can you tell us what metrics actually matter when we are evaluating a game's long-term future?
So I think the most important things are usually engagement. So if the game has very, very strong engagement, that's that's what shows the real potential, especially if we're talking about long-term retention, sticky factor, playtime. So if we can make that the game is part of players' lifestyle, the game becomes players' habit, and they spend a lot of time there. Making it, making a good monetization for that and make money out of that it's not an easy task, but it's solvable. Like it's pretty understandable what do you need to do in order to achieve that. So the most important thing are usually like making the game a habit for player, making it part of players' lifestyle. If you can manage that, monetization will follow.
Got it. Okay. So, Anton, what we'll do is we'll just shift gears a little bit. Maybe just play a short rapid fire round. So, what you need to do is I'll just ask a few questions, and the first thought that comes to your mind, you can that's going to be your answer, basically.
Okay, let's try.
So let's start. So, one game you admire purely for its production discipline.
The benchmark for everyone and for a reason. Also, if as a second thought that I would add would be, of course, Supercell's games. Specifically, like you might saw that Clash Royale recently got a huge comeback into top charts, increasing their revenue several times. And what is very important and impressive that their headcount is actually one of the lowest
Right.
headcount per game
Right.
for top grossing games. So they're achieving incredible results with a very, very small team actually, and that's huge.
Incredible, yeah. Okay. The hardest production decision you've ever had to make.
That is, I think, always closing the project. So when you have to close the project and it's not a prototype stage, it's like ongoing development, but you understand that you miscalculated something, or maybe the market change, or maybe your situation change and you don't have resources to finish the project, but you've already invested a lot of time, resources, efforts into the project, and you have to close it. That's very tough.
Process driven or instinct driven leadership? What would you choose?
I actually don't think that you have to choose. I think you can have both. So of course, like the decisions and like the production, it requires the pipeline, the process, the data driven. That's for sure. But you still need some kind of a direction, a vision, like what you are doing, and then like why you need some kind of hypothesis. And for that, you need, well, instinct or gut feeling or just vision, call it like whatever you want, but still you need to somehow pick this direction and maintain it. So I think ideally you want combination of both.
And one habit every producer should build early on.
Definitely, as I mentioned, the sense of ownership. So you should definitely try to imagine, like, uh, let's say I'm an owner of this game, like I own it completely. Would I be satisfied with how the things are going? Honestly, would I invest like my own money, my own resources into it, into the team, knowing how the things are going or not? And I think if you really practice this, sometimes it won't just improve your work a bit, or make you work harder or something. No, sometimes it make like completely pivot how you approach it. If you try to look through this lens, you might be thinking that we're making some crap. I would be never investing my own money into that. And when you start thinking that, you start understanding what is really going on, what's wrong, and you might, come up with some completely different solutions and approaches and completely different plan, rather than you just, was doing your job as a producer.
And a similar question, but what advice would you give to producers trying to grow into executive roles?
Always try to think one level higher. So if you are leading some department on the project, always, question yourself, how does it fit into the entire project, how it influences the entire project, what are the main KPIs and strategy for the whole project, not only for my department. If you are leading the project, ask yourself question, how does it fit into the company strategy, what's actually the most important things for company right now. Maybe it's not even my project, and why, and how I can, contribute to that. If you're, leading a company, think, how your investors, etc. So the goal here is to think one level ahead of you, and ideally try to contribute somehow already to that level. So it's kind of fake it till you make it. It works here as well. So yeah.
Yeah, always works for everything.
Yeah.
All right. What kind of studios do you most enjoy, helping today as of now?
Usually it doesn't really depends on the scale, but I like to help studios who actually want to provide some value and quality and fun for the players, because there are some studios that approach game development as, as an attempt to squeeze money from players. And don't get me wrong, I'm all in for, maximizing your revenue and ROAS, etc. But I just believe that eventually, the best game, the games that provide the best user experience, fun, and value, they will earn the most money. And these things, they're not the opposite; they come together. And if you take a look at top 100, casual games, you won't find any exception out of it. All games that are top grossing, they provide incredibly good user experience, even for non-paying users.
Right.
You can play like real much and have a lot of fun if you are not paying. So yeah, I believe that, and I like working with studios that first of all are trying to provide the best user experience to the player.
Understood. That's wonderful. I mean, if you probably focus on experience and everything else will follow, so that is what studios also need to. And then where can people follow your work or your thoughts? If you can just talk about that.
Yeah, so I have my blog on LinkedIn. They can follow me on LinkedIn. I regularly post my notes and thoughts on the mobile gaming market there.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Anton. This has been incredibly insightful for us. Of course,
Thanks.
executive production is one of the most misunderstood roles in the industry, because this conversation really sort of clarified what leadership at scale actually looks like. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And to everyone listening, if you found this valuable, make sure to follow the show and share it with someone building in games. We'll see you in the next episode. Thank you.